We're going to rebuild these, I don't know what you want to call them, swing out windows. This is our rear window on our Santa Fe, and this was what was the bathroom. That was the small window that goes in the bathroom. So it's got a piece of frosted glass in there that I'm considering changing to regular glass. Unfortunately, this piece of glass is cracked, so I'm going to replace this piece of glass. And I found this seal online, so I'll get some new seal coming. And also, this seal is around the outside edge here. So I found that online as well. We'll take this all apart. I'm going to put a new aluminum screen in here, and you can see how this screen actually attaches differently. It appears that it's just bent around this lip. So I'll get that replaced too. So let me get this all apart, get some new glass, some screen, get the seals here, and we'll finish up. I just pulled the old seal out. It's there. Flipped it over, and we can see our hardware. It's pretty rusty. So I've got this applicator, penetrating oil with this applicator. Let's see if it'll get in there. That should work a little bit better. I guess you have to pull the tube out all the way. So let's get some oil on these guys, let them soak for a minute, and then see if we can get them apart. Took the hardware out there so we could open this up all the way. Now some of these screw heads you can't really get to unless you're going to use a real stubby screwdriver or take the screen out first, but that means that the screen has to go in last if you do that. So I think I will go ahead and take the screen out now. So looking at this, you can see how it's just kind of crimped around this edge here. So I'll just peel that off all the way around and we'll take the screen off. Earlier I was contemplating replacing these rivets just because they're ugly and rusty, but now that I'm trying to take the screen off, I see that you actually have to take those rivets out because this bracket needs to come off. Pulls right out of there. You can see it's kind of just crimped around. You could probably use the same screen tool to push it into that edge later when we install it. Alright, now we can get to all this hardware a lot easier with that screen out. As you take this hardware out, you'll see how this glass is retained. That piece just comes out of there. There's no sealant or butyl tape or anything in there because that rubber seal is what seals the water out. Now I've seen these, at least the nuts I've seen advertised on one of the websites as a reproduction item that they carry, but I'm not sure about the screws or the bolts. They're really low profile heads, but I'll do some research and see if I can find some replacements for that. But alright, so we got all the hardware out. This cross brace is going to just come out like that, and then all these little retainer clips that are on the outside edge of the glass are going to come off. Get this glass out of here. Yeah, bummer, but what are you going to do? I think it's been broken for a while. Look at the cut on this glass. It's interesting. Kind of wavy. Alright, well, let's pull this glass out. Now this doesn't appear to be safety glass like a car windshield. It's just the seal is held on with adhesive, and so when you put the new seal on, you'll have to use some kind of either weather strip adhesive or silicone sealant. You can see it in there. So All that's got to be cleaned off. I'll take all that off. This is all aluminum except for this brace is metal, and it's actually rusting, if you could see it in there. So I don't want to pop these rivets, so I'm just going to sand this down and squirt it with some silver paint, because this actually shows. This is the outside when the window's closed. That shows to the outside. So I'll clean that up and give it a coat of silver paint, get all this aluminum cleaned up, and we'll get our parts and we'll put it back together. Slight difference on this smaller bathroom window. When I drilled these rivets out to take this bracket off, this piece is actually through the screen, and there's a hole in the screen there, but I had to bend this tab out, and I'll have to bend that tab to remove this. So you can see there. We're going to go ahead and do some chemical stripper on these window frames, get this white paint off. Make sure you brush it on in one direction like the instructions say. This is about 45 seconds. Filling up pretty good already. Get it scraped off with a putty knife. Plastic putty knife would be better so you don't scratch the aluminum up. This is about the 5th or 6th coat, and it's coming out pretty good. Make sure you're wearing your PPE, lots of personal protective equipment. This stuff is nasty, but it does work really well. And one mistake that I was making earlier on was that you got to make sure that you work this stuff while it's still wet. Don't let it dry out, man, because you'll just be fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And I was making that mistake. I was doing too large of an area in the beginning, and it would dry out before I could get the paint scraped off. So just do it when it's wet, alright? Don't get too crazy. As for the instructions, we're going to use some mineral spirits and Scotch-Brite, and go ahead and clean up the rest of this residue here. So let's see. I'll go ahead and scrub this whole thing down. Alright, so we pretty much destroyed that pad. For about 10 minutes I've been scrubbing on this, and it worked pretty good. I have to say, it removed the rest of the paint pretty well. I was hesitant and I was going to use a power tool instead, but this worked really well. So as for the instructions, we're going to go ahead and wipe this down and with a rag, and let's see how it turns out. That turned out pretty good. So don't forget that we got all these little trim pieces that need to be cleaned up too. So I'm going to clean all this stuff up, and maybe even give this a coat of paint. Get in here and clean up. This is where that gasket is going to end up riding to seal the glass. I'm going to clean that up, and then on the back side, this weather strip adhesive is here. If I get all this off, I'm probably using an air tool for that. Use that Scotch-Brite or that Roll-Lock disc. So then we get all this cleaned up, and we'll continue on. Here are all the part numbers for all the gaskets that I purchased to rebuild these windows. And this is from Vintage Trailer Gaskets, and I got them on their website. See the ribs on the inside there, and then the ribs on the bottom. So this gasket on this window frame is going to go on this lip like that. Oops. And those ribs should seal and help grip the frame, and then on the back side, the piece of glass is going to end up pressing against the back, and that's what those ribs are for on the back, to grab onto the glass. So let me get this measured out and cut, and I am going to put my seam at the bottom. got it fit all the way around. You can't even hardly see that seam. But I just cut it with a pair of wire cutters. It's nice and soft. And I left it a little long and kind of shoved it and smushed it in. And so I'm thinking this is going to shrink a little bit, and I didn't want it to get a gap there. So let me grab a piece of glass. We'll flip it over and put the glass in the back. Here's our new piece of glass. Got the trim all cleaned up. That's pretty good. So we'll get these put in. I picked up these 832 by 3/8 machine screws. They're not exactly the same as the stock ones. Ones from the factory had a much larger head on them, but I think they're going to work okay, but we'll see. So you can see that these have a little J shape to them. So that goes and hooks over the top like that, and then the hardware will go through the bolt hole and hold the glass down. You can actually see on these pieces of trim there's a witness mark of the nut was on this side, so the bolt head will be on the other side. Got all the hardware tightened up. So before you tighten everything down, make sure that you come back in here and push that gasket down. Push it so that it's secure all the way around. I'm going to push it this way because it kept trying to creep out of there. But the weight of the glass, and then when you get these retainer clips in, it'll keep it in there pretty good. But you just want to be sure that it didn't move before you tighten these down. Alright, so we got all this in. Next we'll get all these linkages put in that control the tilt out function of this window. They attach in here, and we'll get the screen going. Picked up this aluminum screen. Now I know the original screen that was in this window was more like a galvanized and pretty stiff wire screen, but I'm going to try this aluminum stuff that I just picked up at the home improvement place at the charcoal. See if it'll bend around these edges, so that's what retains it. There's no kind of cord or anything in there. It's just that bends around this edge all the way around. So I'll give it a try. Let me cut a piece, see if I can get it in there. I cut the screen to fit, and so what seems to be working pretty good. I'm using this cat's paw. I'm sure you could use a putty knife, but I'm making sure that the screen is tight down like this, and then I'm just poking the screen in with this tool like that. So I'm going down with one hand, pushing down on the screen to make sure it's flat, and then poking it in all the way down. It actually worked out really well. Look how tight that screen is, looking all the way across. I was surprised. So yeah, just to keep tucking it in here, and then this is how the original one looked when I took it out. As long as your finger, when you rub your finger across here, you can't touch that sharp edge because it's tucked in there, and then it should be totally fine. Alright, so next is cut a small hole here in the screen to put together the latching mechanism. Yeah, I'm super impressed with how that turned out. It looks real nice. Took my razor blade here and I just basically slit right through here, just enough to get that arm an area to pass through. So now this bracket goes onto here. There are two holes that had steel pop rivets, and that kind of holds the screen down too. And that arm will pass through there, and it actually latches here. I'll show you when you operate the window. So here's the latch, I guess you would call it. It's passing through this bracket that's now riveted in, and then so what it does is you lift it up like this, and then the screen can pass through, and then it has a spring latch inside here that catches, and that would push, of course the screen would be stationary, but that would push the window out and it would lock, and that's how it locks in. It's got a spring system in here. Alright, so we got our hardware in. I just used a original bolt here because it has to be small enough to fit inside of this channel, and I mean you could go get one, but I just reused the original. So next up is the gasket that goes here all the way around, that seals the window to the frame. Put that on. Here's the final seal. It's kind of like it's got a bubble or a bulb to it, and then on this side it's got some ribs that will grab onto that aluminum. So basically I dry fit by cutting the 3 pieces here, here, and here, and then I'll take them back off and I'll put a couple little dabs of silicone sealant just on the back side to hold the seal in place, because when you go to install the window you have to pull this seal back to get to the screw holes. So you want this side to be attached with some kind of sealant. Well, there it is. New screen, new seals. It's looking pretty good. Thanks for watching.